Midwest Chickens here. I share content of and about my chickens here in the Midwest, and I want to share with you my experience with the Grandpa Feeder. This is a no-waste feeder that sports a pretty hefty price tag, so I want to share with you the pros and cons of this feeder so you can decide if it's worth it for you. Let's talk about first how this feeder works. Essentially, the feeder is designed to open when the specific weight of a chicken or heavier steps on the lever in the front. This prevents rats, mice, squirrels, and other birds from getting into the feed. I knew I needed some kind of solution for this because I often saw birds during the day getting into the run and eating from my feed, and also mice at night. Not only does this step lever action help prevent feeding the wildlife instead of your flock, but it also reduces their presence, no more food, which also helps make for a healthier flock. On top of the step lever action, the back of the feeder where the food is stored also has a bolting system that makes it easy for you to open when you press in, but it makes it impossible for animals to open if you close it correctly. You just press in to take the lid off, and then you press in to put it back on. I just want to make sure that there's these bolts. I want to make sure the bolts get into the holes so you can't lift it up like that. It also helps with preventing waste. There are options to DIY a wood version of this online. I'll try to link one below. However, rodents can chew through wood and even plastic, so I decided to go with this metal one. Now, I purchased the large Grandpa Feeder. It's recommended for flocks with a dozen or more chickens and can feed 4 to 5 chickens at a time. It can hold 40 pounds of feed, which is why I chose it, because I buy 50-pound feed bags at a time, and it's great to just put it in the feeder and walk away for a week. However, I find that the large feeder really only holds about 60% of a 50-pound bag, which does last about 10 days. I am disappointed that there seems to be some kind of discrepancy there. The way that you train chickens to use the feeder is, starting off, you keep the feeder lid open so the chickens can eat from it as needed. If you have a severe rodent problem, you can close the feeder at night by removing the bolts and then opening it in the morning during this phase. That way, rodents aren't getting into it at night. Essentially, at this stage, you are really just getting the chickens used to standing on the feeder lever/step, and also getting them used to walking up to the feeder. After about a week, or if you have chicks when they are too big to jump into the feeder, you are supposed to take the opening down a notch so that when the chickens step on the lever/step, the lid moves up slightly. After another week on that setting, then you close the feeder completely and let them adjust. That is at least what Grandpa Feeder says in their directions and on their website. However, in my experience, it took much longer to get my chickens used to the feeder. I actually got this feeder with my first layer of Buff Orpingtons, who on the halfway open setting basically refused to step on the lever unless they were starving. I kept them on this setting for months, and they remained skittish of the feeder until I brought in my second layer of chickens when they were 6 weeks old. I tried everything to get my first layer of chickens to use this feeder. I put treats on the lever, I put their treats in the actual feeder, and they just would not use it unless they were literally starving. When I brought my second layer of chickens in at 6 weeks old, I had to reset the feeder to always be open for them because they were too small for it to be on any other setting. And as I adjusted their feeder as they got older, my older girls caught on and started using it no problem. I do wonder if my old rooster had something to do with my first layer of the flock not using the feeder. He was extremely and excessively overprotective, and I did notice that he would frequently tell them to stay away from the feeder when I was trying to train that first layer. I did read that if your chickens do get stuck on the first halfway open setting, you can add a piece of wood to the lever to hold it down more so it reduces how much noise and how far it opens as an additional setting for them to get used to. I just was not able to do that, and by the time I could, the entire flock had already caught on to how to use the feeder, and it was no longer a problem. Basically, they say it should only take 2 weeks to train your chickens on the feeder. For my older girls who I introduced the feeder to originally, it definitely took them a lot longer, several months in fact, for them to get trained on it. For my pullets though that I introduced to it, they caught on super duper fast. Now let's talk about the cons of the feeder. Unless I directly look into the feeder, it's hard to know how much feed is left. You have to be diligent about checking as you get closer to the 10-day mark because otherwise you have no way of knowing unless you're literally looking inside it. I also had an issue where the bolts on one of the lever arms kept getting loose and causing the step to fall apart and be unusable, so the chickens couldn't access the food. I had to go to the hardware store and buy new bolts to replace them, and that seems to have fixed it, but that's really annoying, especially if I spent so much money on the whole feeder that this was an issue.
Oh, they're loosening again. Don't know why it keeps happening just on this side.
In the early stages, when the chicks were training on this feeder, they would jump on top of the feeder lid that was opened by the lever, and it would close on the chickens eating from it underneath. This was terrifying. I could definitely see a chicken getting killed or hurt if the chickens didn't get off the lid or I didn't remove them myself. I do feel extremely frustrated that on the website they say they have never had a single reported case of any chicken getting their head caught, because it literally happened to me in my flock several times. Now the flock seems to be very careful about this currently, and if a chicken seems to be close to jumping onto the lid, they will move and stop eating from the feeder until that chicken moves. However, this is literally a risk. Like, I don't know how they're just kind of brushing that off. That is, it's concerning. Additionally, in the run, often bedding will get kicked underneath the step lever, causing the feeder not to open all the way, which doesn't stop them from eating, but I can tell that they are annoyed. And I think if the bedding were to get caught too far underneath it, it could potentially stop opening. So that is pretty annoying, and I will have to literally go over there and kick out all of the debris underneath so that the lever actually opens all the way. As a side note to that, I wonder if making a patio of stone pavers and placing the feeder on that so it is slightly raised might help with this, but I haven't tried it yet. Ultimately, the three big things I wish were different about this feeder is I wish it held a full 50-pound bag of feed. I wish there was some kind of guard underneath to prevent the bedding from building up that stops it from opening all the way. And I wish there was a third setting to train chickens on. Going from the fully open point to the halfway open point just seemed extremely jarring to my flock. And when I was looking up this problem, it seems like it's something that happens to a lot of people's flocks. And it seems like an easy enough addition, just put another hole for an extra setting. All that said, let me talk about the pros. Experienced virtually no feed loss since being able to use this feeder on the last setting. Chickens don't flick their food around onto the ground, and I'm not seeing any birds or rodents getting into the feed. In fact, I haven't seen any wildlife in the chicken run for a while. I know this is an investment that will pay off in the long run, just in prevention of feed wasted alone. I have had zero issues with feed getting wet, which has also helped prevent waste. And it gives me peace of mind knowing that if I need to leave for a few days, my chickens will have enough food to last and no wildlife will compromise that. Finally, the feeder has worked with both pellet and crumble-based feed. What I really like about this option is it doesn't rely on me remembering every night to take the feeder up or close it in order to protect it from rodents. And I think in my scenario, even with the challenges, it has been a great choice for my flock. It has reduced wildlife presence. It makes sure all of the feed actually goes to my chickens. It reduces my own workload, and it has also increased my own freedom, aka I can leave for a few days and not worry about my chickens. So that's been my experience with the Grandpa Feeder. If you use this, I would love to hear your experience in the comment section. And if you are considering it, I hope that this has helped you make a more informed choice.